Hey everyone, it's Lindsay and I'm here today with a video on selective stamping. Now a while back, Two Paper Divas came out with the Junk Food Alley Sentiment set, and it has a few stamps that go along with it, but they came out with another one that goes along with the popcorn sentiment in the set, and that's what I'm going to be using today. So I've got the popcorn stamp loaded onto a large acrylic block, and I'm just inking it up with black dye ink, and I'm stamping it onto some Ink-a-Dink-a-Doo masking paper. I stamped this out 3 separate times, and then I'm just going to fussy cut each one of these masks out using my fine detail scissors. Now I'm not going to worry about the little popcorn on the sides because I won't end up stamping those. I'm just going to cut out the bowl with the popcorn in it. So all the little extras I won't even worry about cutting out. So now that I have my mask cut out and I've still got my stamp loaded up onto my acrylic block, I'm going to bring in some post-it notes for my stamping. This is just one way to do it, and I'll show you another way in a moment. But before I ink up my stamp, I'm just going to use the sticky side of the post-it note to place this down over the parts of the stamp that I don't want inked up. Now you can also cut your stamp if you're comfortable doing that. I am comfortable doing that. However, this stamp, the popcorn pieces were really close to that bowl, and there was no way I could fit my scissors in there without ruining the entire stamp. So this is just one way to do this. So I just covered those up, inked up my stamp, and then I can lift off those post-it notes, and when I stamp this down, all I get is the popcorn bowl itself. I don't get those little extra pieces on the side, which is exactly what I wanted to happen. So now that I've got that first one stamped down, I'll just peel off the backing paper on this masking paper, and I'll just use my tweezers to place this right over the top of that stamp. Because I use black dye ink, this is going to dry really quickly and I don't need to wait at all. So I continued stamping these. You can see I have 3 on the right hand side, and now I want to show you that you can also use painter's tape, masking tape, whatever you have on hand. Washi tape as well would work, even scotch tape. You just need to cover up the parts of the stamp that you don't want inked up. Now I tend to like the post-it notes better just because they're nice and bright. I don't forget to remove them. I can't tell you how many times I've used this painter's tape or masking tape. I've inked up my stamp and then stamped it right down without removing it. The bright colors tend to grab my attention more, and then I just don't forget to take off those covering up the stamp, and I don't ruin what I've worked on. So that's just my 2 cents, but painter's tape works really well as well. Here you can see I've continued stamping and masking. I'm using the stamp stacking technique here, and I'll just continue to ink this up and stamp it out one more time. And I should mention that I am using a 3.5 inch by 5.5 inch piece of white cardstock to stamp on. Nothing special here, just because I'm going to be doing some coloring with my colored pencils and blending out with some odorless mineral spirits for this card. I am also using a piece of fun foam behind my piece of cardstock to stamp on. This is a really fine detail image stamp, so this little cushion behind there just gives me a really nice impression when I stamp down. And whenever I'm masking and using a lot of work to make up a scene, that fun foam behind there just gives me the reassurance that I'm going to get it right the first time. Now that I had all of my little popcorn bowls stamped out, I'm going to go ahead and use the Junk Food Alley Sentiment set. This is from Two Paper Divas, and it was released a few months ago. Now these are really punny sayings, so they go along with certain images. However, I wanted to use the Get Out and Celebrate lickety split sentiment, but I didn't want to use the banana split image to go along with it. So what I'm going to do is I'm taking that Get Out and Celebrate lickety split, I'm using my painter's tape, and I am just going to cover up the lickety split part. So this is just going to read Get Out and Celebrate. I'll go ahead and ink this up. Again, I'm using black dye ink for this. And then I'll need to remove my tape, but you can see it is inking up the bottom part of that sentiment through the tape. Just peel off that tape, and then you know that you have a nice clean image underneath there, so it's not going to leave any marks on your paper. If you do get a little bit of ink, just take a dry cloth and wipe it down, and that ink should come right off, and then you can stamp it down and know that you're not going to get any ink where you don't want it. I'll just stamp that right down into the bottom right hand corner, and then I'm going to move on to coloring. Now, it has been a while since I pulled out my colored pencils, so I wanted to pull these out for this card, and I'm going for a really scribbled look here, but I am going to use my odorless mineral spirits to blend this out just a bit. Now, I've got quite a few different colors and shades of orange and yellow, and just a few really tan, a little bit yellow mixed in there too. And I'm just going to quickly scribble down the color on each one of these popcorn pieces, not going in any order, making it really nice and random, using a few dark colors, a few light colors, a few bright colors, just to make it look like actual popcorn. And I am just really quickly scribbling. I'm also only using one shade per popcorn kernel, so I'm not doing anything fancy here. I'm not doing any blending really. Now, once I have that color down, I'm going to go ahead and pick up my little blending stump here. I have filed off a little bit of the color that was left over from a previous project, and then I just dip it in my OMS and I'll blend this color out. Now, this is really simple to do. You just dip it in your odorless mineral spirits and then kind of rub it over the color, and that is going to take away all your pencil lines. Now, I really didn't want it to take away all of them. I just wanted a little bit blended out, so I'm not using a whole lot of product here, but you'll know when you need to redip it in your product. You'll kind of get a squeaky feeling as you rub your blending stump over the color, and then that's when you know you need to go ahead and pick up more of your mineral spirits and bring it over to your cardstock. Now, I'm also keeping this away from my stamped image lines. I want to kind of give it a really sketchy feel to this card, so I am not being super careful here. I'm really randomly coloring these in, blending them out. And to speed up the process, I'm using one color at a time and just randomly filling in different parts of the scene here with the color. So it's really going quickly to fill in this color. Once I had those all filled in with color, I could come back in with the blending stump and more OMS and just blend those out really quickly. Once I was done with the actual kernels, I moved on to coloring in the bowls. Now, I'm going to keep this theme for like a little boy card. My son, we've gone through so many birthday cards it seems the past few years, so I've kind of run out and I'm trying to rebuild up my stash here. So I'm using some greens, some turquoise, teal blues, and then also I'm going to bring in some orange. Now, I just colored in these green bowls, and then I'm going to go ahead and scribble in the blue, and then I'll bring in the orange finally. And this is a darker orange than what I used in the kernels. Now, you can see here I am going very quickly. I know this is sped up, but this took no time at all to color these in. I'm simply going around the perimeter and then scribbling in the color in the middle, and that's all this took. Then I can just bring in my blending stump and I can just blend these out really quickly. Now, if you find that you want a little bit more color, like I did with the green here, you can come right back in with your colored pencil while this is wet and put on more color and then blend that out as well. And even when the colors, or even when the OMS is on there, your color goes on a little bit smoother, so you really don't need to do a whole lot more blending. So this is a really quick way to scribble in some color and blend it out. I moved on to the orange, and you've seen in between the green and the orange, I did use my file over there at the side to scribble off to sand off the color that was on my blending stump, and that just cleans it off and allows me to move on to the next color. When I was finished with all of my coloring and blending, I moved on to create a little mat for my scene here. Now, I have a piece of orange cardstock, and this measures 4.5 inches by 5.5 inches. 4 inches by 5.5 inches, and I am just using a wavy border die here to put a nice wavy edge on both sides of this piece of orange cardstock. So I'll just tape that down, and you've seen I used painter's tape to hold this in place, and I just put it on my hand a few times and rip it up just so it gives a little bit of that stickiness away, and then it won't rip my cardstock when I die cut. There you can see I've got a nice wavy border on both sides of this piece of cardstock, or the top and bottom, excuse me, and then I'm going to put this card together. So I just put some double-sided adhesive on the back of my popcorn colored panel here, and I'm just going to carefully place this down onto this wavy bordered die cut piece of orange cardstock. You want to be a little careful so you get it nice and centered. Those wavy borders aren't very forgiving, but it's not impossible to do. And then I use some double-sided adhesive on some white fun foam, and I'll just pop this panel up onto an A2 side folding white card base. And I always check to make sure that I have my card base going the right direction and that it opens up the right way before I put my final panels on. Just a little tip from someone who's done it wrong a few times. And that will complete the card for today. I hope you all enjoyed this video, and I hope that you guys will try some selective stamping of your own. It's a great way to get more out of your stamp sets. As always, I will leave you guys with just a few pictures. For more information and the supply list, you can head to my blog, craftingwhilecaffeinated.wordpress.com. The link is in the description box below. Thank you guys so much for watching today, and happy crafting!